Question number 64. Gas Nature. Gas Nature is a public limited company involved in the production and trading of natural gas and oil. It prepares its financial statements using international financial reporting standards. The directors require advice about the accounting treatment of some transactions that Gas Nature has entered into during the year. ठीक है, तो आप अपने को खाली को मतलब बताना है कि कैसे आईएफआरएस स्टैंडर्ड्स के हिसाब से अकाउंटिंग होनी चाहिए. Discuss with reference to IFRS standards how gas nature should account for the above agreement and contract. तो भी सबसे पहली बात तो gas nature jointly owns an underground storage facility with another entity, GoGas. Both parties extract gas from offshore gas fields, which they own and operate independently from each other. Gas Nature owns 55% of the underground facility and GoGas owns 45%. They have agreed to share services and costs accordingly, with decisions regarding the storage facility require unanimous consent agreed of the parties. Local legislation requires the decommissioning of the storage facility at the end of the useful life. Gas Nature wishes to know how to treat agreement with GoGas, including any obligation or possible obligation arising on underground storage facility. According to IFRS 11, joint arrangements are arrangements between two or more parties, to have a joint control. Uh, Joint arrangements can take two form: joint operations and joint ventures. In the current scenario, we can see that Gas Nature jointly owns an underground storage facility with another entity, GoGas. Um, Gas Nature owns 55% of the underground facility and GoGas owns 45%. They have agreed to share services and costs accordingly. However, हाँ, एक पॉइंट अपन ऊपर नहीं बोला कि जॉइंट कंट्रोल होता क्या है, वो अपन ने नहीं बोला. So joint control is a situation wherein the relevant decisions in the business activities requires unanimous consent of all the parties. So ये अपन ऊपर लिख देंगे. और अभी यहाँ पर also we can see in this scenario also we can see that the decisions regarding the storage facility require unanimous consent of the parties. So thus, this situation between Gas Nature and GoGas can be said to be a joint arrangement. Here, it can take a form of joint operation because there is no separate legal entity involved that Gas Nature and GoGas are creating. If it was a joint venture, then it would have been structured through a separate vehicle, but it is not structured through a separate vehicle, or the creation is not structured through a separate vehicle, and thus it is a joint operation. um, और क्या बोल सकते हैं, देखो. The local legislation requires decommissioning of the storage facility at the end of its useful life. The decommissioning cost should be brought to their present value and should be capitalized in the asset. ये अपन बोल देंगे. A provision can need to be made in accordance with IAS 37, provisions, contingent liabilities and contingent assets. प्रोविजन, फिर वो प्रोविजन के 3 पॉइंट्स बता देंगे. यहाँ पर सब सब लिख देंगे अपन, यहाँ पे जितना अपने को सब पता होगा और अपने को जितना हिंट मिल रहे होंगे उतना. Provision will need to be made when there is present obligation as a result of past event, uh, when economic outflow of resources is probable to take place, and there is reliable information. There's a reliable information that can be drawn about the financial outflow. Next, this decommissioning cost को capitalize को बोल दिया. Gas Nation wishes to know how to treat the GoGas, including any potential of possible obligation arising on the underground facility. If there are any losses that have been uh, incurred by this operation, then those losses would be recognized in full by the ghost by the gas nature. Uh, this is because or the provision for these losses can be recognized by the gas nature in full because we assume that the subsidiary would go into liquidation or has the potential to go into liquidation ये अपन बोल सकते हैं चेक कर लेते हैं gas nature. Joint arrangement occurs when two or more parties have joint control. Joint control exists when decisions about relevant activities require unanimous consent of parties sharing the control. The classification of joint arrangement as joint operation or joint venture depends upon the rights and obligations of the parties to the arrangement. A joint arrangement which is not structured through a separate vehicle is normally a joint operation which is not structured through a separate vehicle. The joint operator accounts for assets and liabilities, revenues and expenses relating to its involvement in the joint operation. The arrangement with GoGas is a joint arrangement because decisions regarding the platform require unanimous agreement of both parties. The joint arrangement with GoGas should be classified as a joint operation because there is no separate vehicle involved. Gas nature should recognize 55% of the assets cost as property, plant, and equipment. देखो under IS 16 property plant and equipment the cost of an item of property plant and equipment must include the initial estimate of the cost of dismantling and removing the item and restoring the site on which it is located. IS 37 provisions contingent liabilities and contingent assets stipulates how to measure decommissioning and restoration costs and similar liabilities where the effect of the time value of money is material. The amount of a provision should be the present value of the expected expenditure required to settle the obligation. तो ये मैंने बस बोला कि प्रोविजन कैसे रिकॉग्नाइज किया जा सकता है. Gas nature should account for 55% of the present value of estimated decommissioning cost. Gas nature will include this in the PPE and will also recognize provision for the same amount because gas nature is a joint operator. There is also a contingent liability. ये देखो जो 45 की जो मैं बोल रहा था ना कि we always assume कि बंदा जो सामने वाला है वो अगर लिक्विडेशन में से में चला गया तो उसका खर्चा भी अपने को बेयर करना पड़ेगा. सो उसके लिए अपन कंटिंजेंट लायबिलिटी बनाते हैं बिकॉज गैस नेचर जॉइंट ऑपरेटर देयर इज पोटेंशियल ऑब्लिगेशन इफ सम अनसर्टन फ्यूचर इवेंट occurs such as GoGas goes into liquidation and cannot find the decommissioning cost. Therefore, gas nature should disclose a contingent liability to the extent that is potentially liable for GoGas's share of decommissioning costs. मैं काम करता हूँ मैं बस इस क्वेश्चन को ना मैं मेरे रिपीट समझ में डाल देता हूँ. नंबर 64 का ए पार्ट. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट वन एक बार चेक करते हैं. जाओ जाओ जाओ. Gas Nature has entered into 10-year contract with Agas for purchase of natural gas. Gas Nature has made an advance payment to Agas for an amount equal to the total quantity of gas contracted for 10 years, which has been calculated using the forecasted price of gas. The advance carries interest of 6% per annum, which is settled by way of supply of the extra gas. Fixed quantities of gas have been supplied each month, and there is a price adjustment mechanism in the contract whereby difference between forecasted price of the gas and prevailing market price is settled in cash monthly. If a gas does not deliver gas as agreed, a gas for gas nature has right to claim compensation at the current market price of a gas. Gas nature wishes to know whether the contract with a gas should be accounted under IFRS 9 फाइनेंशियल इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स. तो एक मिनट ना ये जो चीज है ना ये डेरिवेटिव तो है क्योंकि इट इज सेटल्ड नेट इन कैश. लेकिन मुझे बस ये चीज चेक करना है कि इसमें एग्जीक्यूटरी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है कि नहीं है कि मतलब खुद के पर्सनल यूज के लिए है कि नहीं मुझे वो चेक करना है. ओके. द करंट इन द करंट एक्चुअली मैं ना यहाँ पर बता नहीं पा रहा हूँ कि यहाँ पे डिलीवरी वो ले रहे हैं कि नहीं ले रहे हैं. अगर यहाँ पे नहीं बोला गया ना कि वो लोग डिलीवरी ले रहे हैं तो इट इज अ डेरिवेटिव कॉन्ट्रैक्ट शुड बी ट्रीटेड एज PNL. एक काम करते हैं, पहले मैं चालू करता हूँ आंसर को. So, in accordance with IFRS 9 financial instruments, the current contract between gas nature and a gas for the purchase of natural gas is a derivative contract, because we can see that it is settled net in cash. Uh, so, a derivative contract has the following characteristics. First of all, it is highly its prices is highly volatile and keeps on changing. It requires very low initial investment, or at times nil investment, and it is always settled in the future. ठीक है. This can be indicated by seeing that it is that देखो, the advance payment of gas amounts to equal total contracted, I think. दैट ये देखो, ये जो कैलकुलेट किया गया ना वैल्यू, ये कैलकुलेट किया गया एज पर द फोरकास्टेड प्राइस ऑफ द गैस. ठीक है ना. सो ये एक है वेरिएबल डिफरेंस बिटवीन द फोरकास्ट, और ये भी है कि द प्राइस adjustment mechanism in the contract whereby difference between the forecasted price of the gas and prevailing market price is settled in cash monthly. तो ये भी एक पॉइंट है जो दो अपन डाल सकते हैं कि ये डेरिवेटिव का हिंट क्यों दे रहा है करके. ये तो बता दिया. अकॉर्डिंग टू derivative is according to IFRS 9, a derivative is always measured through fair value through profit and loss unless we apply hedge accounting. um, Thus, the fair value at each reporting date is measured, and any difference in the gains or losses are being recognized in the profit or loss. Uh, However, any contract which is for company's own use is not recognized or falls outside the scope of IFRS 9 financial instruments. Such contracts are known as executory contracts, and such contracts can be hinted by looking at whether the entity is taking the delivery of for the goods or no, that is for their own use, or that is whether the contract is for their own use or no. So, thus, executory contracts are not accounted for unless they are onerous contracts, in which case provision is recognized. अभी चेक कर, तो ये सब मैंने पहले इनको बता दिया. अभी अपन कंक्लूजन में कैसा बता सकते हैं कि इन द करंट सिनेरियो वी कैन सी that if a gas does not deliver the gas as agreed, then gas nature has the right to claim compensation at the current market price of gas. अब यहाँ पे हम लोग डिलीवरी ले रहे हैं. In this case we can say that we are taking the delivery, and thus it is an executory contract, and thus the contract with the gas will not be accounted for under IFRS 9 financial instruments, is what I think. लेकिन एक बार चेक कर लेते हैं यार, seriously. Financial instruments applies to contracts to buy or sell a financial item that is settled net in cash. Such contracts are accounted for as derivatives. However, contracts which are for entities' own use of a non-financial asset are exempt from the requirements of IFRS 9. ये भी अपन ने बता दिया था. There are various ways in which contract to buy or sell a non-financial item can be settled net in cash. These include when the terms of the contract permit either party to settle it net in cash, when the entity has a practice of settling similar contracts net in cash, when the entity has a practice of taking delivery of the non-financial asset and selling it in the short term to generate profit, and when the non-financial item is readily convertible to cash. To buy or sell an financial item can be settled net in cash. तो नॉन फाइनेंशियल आइटम्स नेट इन कैश बाय या सेल तब हो सकता है जब ये चार कंडीशंस अप्लाइड हो. क्या है वो कि व्हेन टर्म्स ऑफ द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट परमिट ईदर पार्टी टू सेटल नेट इन कैश, कि अपन दोनों में से कोई भी सेटल नेट इन कैश कर सकता है. या हमारी पास्ट प्रैक्टिस रही है कि हम लोग सिमिलर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स को, मतलब ऐसे ही सिमिलर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स को नेट इन कैश ही सेटल करते हैं. यहाँ पर जो नॉन फाइनेंशियल एसेट है वो अपन उसको रेडीली बेचकर पैसा कमा सकते हैं, एंड या कैश कमा सकते हैं. एंड यहाँ पे व्हेन द एंटिटी हैज अ प्रैक्टिस ऑफ टेकिंग डिलीवरी ऑफ द नॉन फाइनेंशियल एसेट एंड सेलिंग इट इन द शॉर्ट टर्म टू जनरेट प्रॉफिट, ऐसा है. It could be argued that the contract is settled because the penalty mechanism requires a gas to compensate gas nature at the current prevailing market price. Further, if the gas nature is readily convertible into cash in the location where the delivery takes place, the contract could be considered net settled. However, the contract will probably still qualify as own use as long as it has been entered into and continues to be held for gas nature's usage requirements. This means that it falls outside the scope of IFRS 9 and should be treated as an executory contract. The gas nature will be recorded at cost of on the purchase date. अपने बाकी सब बिल्कुल सही बोला, लेकिन अपने बस ये चार रीजंस नहीं दिए वो नेट इन कैश सेटल करने के. बट स्टिल इट इज पार्टली क्वालिफाइड. अगर ये 6 मार्क का तो आपने कम से कम 3 to 4 मार्क्स तो मिलने चाहिए मेरे हिसाब से. ओके, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन पे जाते हैं. Gas Nature's institutional shareholders invest in wide range of entities. Gas Nature's directors are concerned that certain IFRS and IAS standards permits entities to choose between different measurement bases and presentation methods. They believe that these choices hinder its shareholders from comparing Gas Nature to other entities for on a like for like basis. भाई साहब ये 12 मार्क का है. ओ भाई. Outline the main accounting choices permitted by IAS 16 property, plant and equipment, and IAS 20 accounting for government grants and disclosure of the government assistance, and discuss the potential impact of these on investor analysis of financial statement. भाई साहब. ओके. तो एक काम करते हैं भाई, मतलब पहले तो इस मेन क्रंच पे फोकस करता हूँ मैं, क्योंकि मेरे को मन कर रहा है मेन क्रंच पे मतलब फोकस करने का, क्योंकि मेरे को ये आता है. सो द मेन अकाउंटिंग चॉइसेस परमिटेड बाय IAS 16 प्रॉपर्टी प्लांट एंड इक्विपमेंट include in choosing the model for measurement. IAS 16 provides two measurement models, which is first is revaluation model, or first is cost model, and next is revaluation model. In cost model, the asset is measured at initial cost, less depreciation, less impairment losses. At revaluation model, the asset is measured at the revaluation, or that is fair value of the asset, less depreciation, less impairment losses. Um, in the revaluation model, the asset is revalued at the end of each reporting period. Each reporting period to its carrying sorry each reporting period, and thus any gains or losses are recorded in the OCI. However, in cost model, the cost model works on historic cost model, wherein the depreciation keeps on taking place over the years, and depreciation and impairment losses are charged to profit and loss. Now, these accounting choices do not hinder the intercompany comparison. This is because if a company in year one say chooses to use the cost model, and year two say chooses to use the revaluation model, then the company would have to still provide a comparative analysis or statement for the entity if the cost model was taken into consideration. Thus, a change in the presentation of the financial statements will take place, and then this change will be represented in accordance with IAS 8. Changes in the accounting policies, changes in accounting estimates, and errors. Um, it will take place. The change will take place as a change in accounting policy. However, this change will surely hinder the comparison between industry averages and intercompany uh, and company to company analysis or comparison. Uh, because say if one company uses the revaluation model and other uses the cost model, then the carrying values of the property plant and equipment won't be comparable. तो ये अपन बता देंगे IAS 16 के बारे में. After the revaluation model has taken place, the depreciation will still be charged and will be recorded in the profit and loss, and profit and loss, and impairment losses के साथ भी same ही होगा. Now let's come down to IAS 20, accounting for government grants and disclosure of government assistance. The accounting for government grants and disclosure of government assistance provides us various accounting policies or accounting choices, such as uh, if the accounting for government grants is given for say operating activities, then it is recorded in the profit and loss. However, if the then it is recorded in the profit and loss. It can be offset with the expense that we have incurred, or it can be shown as a government grant income. as a separate line item itself. However, if the government grant has been given for purchase of an asset, in that scenario, for government grant in purchase of an asset, we can either reduce the government grant amount from the carrying value of the asset, because of which the carrying value of the asset will come down, and the depreciation which will be charged in the profit and loss will be quite lower, as compared to the other choice being made. The other choice that can be made is that the government grant will be recorded as a liability or a deferred liability. Yeah, as a liability, um, and will be recognized as and when or over the period of time as the government grant over the period of time as the government grant gets available. लाइक नहीं यार, ऐसे सही नहीं लग रहा ये वाला सेंटेंस ना. And will be recorded year on year as the useful life of the grant. ये अपन बता देंगे. Because of this, the depreciation does not get hindered, and a fair representation of the depreciation has been charged to the profit and loss. Thus, if a company does not want to pay tax, then the depreciation expense can be claimed. ये वाला पॉइंट ज्यादा लिखने की जरूरत नहीं, क्योंकि टैक्स के पर्सपेक्टिव से अपन बता भी नहीं रहे. बट स्टिल, उसके बाद हम्म, जब अपन ने पहले जो मैंने पहले बताया था, पता है कि अपन ऑपरेटिंग एक्टिविटी से माइनस कर सकते हैं और डायरेक्टली इनकम में शो कर सकते हैं, तो उधर मैं ये एक पॉइंट डाल दूंगा कि हाउएवर इफ द गवर्नमेंट ग्रांट हैज बीन रिड्यूस्ड फ्रॉम द ऑपरेटिंग एक्टिविटी एक्सपेंसेस, then it won't show a fair presentation and the financial statements won't get comparable, as while comparing it would seem that the company has great cost control over has great cost control. However, it won't state that a government grant has been received from the government. Thus, if a separate line item has been shown in the statement of profit and loss, then that represents a fair presentation. In the same case, if the government grant has been received on an asset, then the government grant has been received on an asset, then if the government grant is reduced from the asset, then one entity would look asset rich. However, the other entity would have a lesser asset base. If the other option is chosen, then the government grant, which is shown on the liability side, might be looked upon by the investors as an increase in the liability, and thus the potential investors might get confused and might not even invest in the company और इन्वेस्ट देयर मनी एल्सवेयर. तो ये मैंने उनको बेसिक क्रंच बता दिया. अभी मैं ऊपर का पार्ट ये लिखूंगा जो इंट्रोडक्शन का. सी, according to the IFRS and IAS standards, various choices are given on for the measurement basis and presentation methods, so that the companies can present their financial statement information in a fair presentation, or might show a fair representation और रेलेवेंस. इसमें कंसेप्चुअल फ्रेमवर्क को डालने की इसमें कोशिश कर रहा हूँ. हम्म, ऐसा लिख सकते हैं कि IFRS and IAS standards permits entities to choose between different measurement bases and presentation methods in order to fulfill the principle of conceptual framework, which is fair presentation and relevance. Because of various presentation methods and measurement methods basis, entities have various options to choose from. When entities have various options to choose from, they can elect the best method which they feel will help them present their financial statements in a better manner or in an appropriate basis. Mm, However, choosing the measurement basis and presentation method is also depends upon the judgment of the management and the directors. ये अपन बता देंगे. पोटेंशियल इम्पैक्ट ऑन द इन्वेस्टर्स तो मैंने एक का बता दिया. IAS 16 का मैंने थोड़ा सा बताया नहीं ना. Hmm, if the cost method is chosen, then every single year the cost of the asset will keep on reducing. Uh, and thus the investors might look upon the company as less asset rich in nature than any other company which is revaluing its assets on a year on year basis. ये मैं बता सकता हूँ। तो 12 मार्क्स में मुझे लगता है इतना काफी हो जाएगा। चेक कर लेते हैं अभी इनका आंसर। IS-16, द इनिशियल रिकॉग्निशन IS-16 allows property, plant and equipment to be measured using either the cost model, that is cost less accumulated depreciation and amount and impairment losses, the revaluation model, the fair value less accumulated depreciation and impairment losses. Assuming that property prices are increasing, an entity that revalues its property, plant, and equipment to fair value will record low profits than one that uses the cost model. Although the gains arising from the revaluation of PPE are recognized outside of profits in other comprehensive income, the depreciation charge on the revalued asset will be higher than if the cost model was used. As such, using the revaluation model may have a detrimental impact on the stakeholders' assessment of an entity's financial performance. Moreover, the higher asset value recorded in the financial position under the revaluation model might also make the entity look less efficient than the one which uses cost model. Okay. However, the positive side, revaluation gains increase the equity, which will improve the gearing. ये वाला काफी अच्छा पॉइंट है कि जो अपना रिवैल्यूएशन गेन्स है वो अपन ओसीआई में डालते हैं, उसके वजह से जो है क्या हो जाता है कि अपना इक्विटी बढ़ जाता है, तो अपना गियरिंग नीचे आ जाता है। वो काफी अच्छा पॉइंट है यार ये, मतलब एक मिनट, विच क्वेश्चन इज दिस, बी पार्ट ना? आई थिंक मैंने ए का सेकेंड पार्ट डाला था मेरे सेकेंड टाइम रिवीजन में, और मैंने बी वाला पार्ट भी डाल दिया है मेरे को रिवीजन वाले पार्ट में। This may make an entity look less risky investment. Moreover, some stakeholders may place importance on the entity's asset base, as this could be used as security for obtaining new finance. Thus, a higher PPE value in the statement of financial position could be viewed positively. Another thing to note is that the revaluation model will make the asset position of an entity more volatile than an entity that uses the cost model. Volatility can increase the perception of risk. However, the statement of profit and loss will be less volatile than statement of financial position, because revaluation, एक मिनट ना please, just a second, just a second, I'm so sorry. एक बार ये पैराग्राफ मैं फिर से पढ़ लेता हूँ ये वाला। Another thing to note that the revaluation model will make the asset position of an entity look more volatile than the entity that uses cost model. ये बात बिल्कुल सही है कि मतलब volatility आ जाती है एसेट, क्योंकि अपन हर साल रिवैल्यूएशन से गेन और लॉस उसमें डाल रहे हैं ना, इसके लिए volatility can increase the perception of risk. However, the statement of profit or loss will be much less volatile than the statement of financial position, because revaluation gains are recorded in other comprehensive income. It should be noted that entities using revaluation model for PPE are required to disclose the carrying amount that would have been recognized in the cost model had been used. तो ये मैंने बताया हुआ था कि अपने को comparative statements देने पड़ते हैं दोनों के. So such disclosure enable better comparison with entities that account for PPE using different measurement models. IS-20, accounting for government grants and disclosures of government assistance. With regards to asset related grants, two methods of presentation are allowed in the statement of financial position. Recognize the grant as a deferred income ही था, मैंने सिर्फ liability बोला था, deferred income, and realize to profit or loss over the useful life of the asset. Deduct the grant from the carrying amount of the asset and then depreciate the asset over its useful life. So ग्रांट को यूजफुल लाइफ ऑफ द एसेट, आई थिंक मैंने गलती से यूजफुल लाइफ ऑफ द ग्रांट बोल दिया था बाय मिस्टेक, बट दिस इज यूजफुल लाइफ ऑफ द एसेट। अपने को ग्रांट को रिकॉग्नाइज करते जाना है ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, एंड अपने को दिखाना है एज डेफर्ड इनकम। डेफर्ड इनकम useful life of the asset की तरह उसको recognize, ठीक। The overall net assets and profit of an entity will not be affected by this choice. However, it could still have an impact on the investor analysis of the financial statements. The entity that uses the deferred income method to present the asset related grants will report higher non-current assets and higher liabilities, बैन एन एंटिटी दैट यूजेस नेटिंग ऑफ मेथड। तो ये मैंने बताया था कि एक तो लायबिलिटीज बढ़ जाती है तो उसका डेट्रीमेंटल इम्पैक्ट, इन्होंने वर्ड यूज किया है डेट्रीमेंटल, और मैंने कहा था कि नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट जाता है, बट सेम थिंग। एंड एक हायर एसेट्स बढ़ने के बाद एक कंपनी एसेट रिच लगती है, जिसके कारण अगर कंपनी लिक्विडेट भी हो गई कल को जाके, तो एक इन्वेस्टर के पास एक आइडिया रहता है कि भाई ठीक है, कंपनी अपने एसेट्स बेच के पैसा कमा सकती है। वैसा विथ रिगार्ड्स टू इनकम रिलेटेड ग्रांट्स, two methods of presentation are allowed in the statement of profit or loss. Present the grant as other income, present the grant as a reduction in the asset expense. The overall profit of the entity will not be affected by this choice. However, it could still have an impact when analyzing financial statements. For instance, an entity that presents grant income by reducing the expenses may be perceived to have better cost control and as operating with greater efficiency than an entity that just grants with other income. तो ये मैंने शायद बताया भी था कि बेसिकली कैसे रहता है कि एक कंपनी अगर अपना कॉस्ट कंट्रोल कर पाए, मतलब ये दिखा है कि मैंने कॉस्ट डायरेक्टली माइनस किया, तो ऐसे दिखेगा कि अरे कंपनी ने एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव कॉस्ट के ऊपर क्या ही कंट्रोल लाया है, लेकिन एक्चुअली वो इनकम या वो जो कॉस्ट है वो कम इसलिए हुई है क्योंकि उसमें वो गवर्नमेंट ग्रांट का वैल्यू था। ठीक है। For instance, an entity that presents grant income by reducing taxes may be perceived as being better costing। ये तो अपन ने बोल दिया। और लास्ट में अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसी। अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसी मतलब कैश फ्लो में उन्होंने बोला अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसी चॉइसेस हैव नो इम्पैक्ट ऑन द ऑपरेटिंग, इन्वेस्टिंग और फाइनेंसिंग कैश फ्लोज रिपोर्टेड इन द स्टेटमेंट ऑफ कैश फ्लोज। क्या? सो थैंक्स मच फॉर वॉचिंग।